Why Alabama's Holman Prison is called the most dangerous in the U.S. If this story grabs you by the throat, hit subscribe. The next one might just keep you up tonight. The storm swept over at more the night everything began, lightning flickering across the flat Alabama fields as if the sky itself were warning the town. At 2:17 a.m., a lone corrections officer radioed a call from Holman Prison that sent a shock through the entire state. "We've got a situation in Unit C. And I think it's connected to the case we closed last year." Holman, already infamous for its tension-filled reputation, had seen its share of emergencies. But this call was different. Officers who arrived at the unit found an inmate missing, one who had been locked down for months. His cell door was closed, no signs of forced entry, and the night shift reported no movement. It was as if he had vanished in plain sight. The missing inmate, Avery Mallard, had been convicted of a series of organized robberies spanning 3 states. Investigators knew him as calm, quiet, and dangerously patient. He never bragged about his crimes. He never talked about his associates. And he never seemed bothered by being locked away. It was the type of silence that made detectives uneasy. Avery had been under investigation even after his conviction. Authorities suspected he was connected to a broader criminal network they hadn't fully uncovered. When he disappeared, without tripping a single alarm, the case was reopened instantly. The question wasn't just how he vanished from Holman. It was why now. Detective Michael Renner was brought back in, despite having officially closed Avery's case the previous fall. Renner had spent years studying Avery's methodical thinking. He once described him as a man who never moves without a plan, and never plans without a purpose. Renner walked the narrow hallway of Unit C with slow, deliberate steps, studying every detail. The unit was unusually quiet, even for Holman. Inside the missing inmate's cell, nothing appeared out of place. The sheet was folded. Books stacked neatly. No signs of a struggle, no markings, no hidden tunnels, no broken latches. But Renner's attention fixed on one thing: a faint scent of industrial cleaner that didn't match the regular supplies used in the prison. The warden insisted that no special cleaning had been ordered. Maintenance records confirmed it. So who used it? And why was the smell strongest at the base of the back wall, a wall that led directly into the prison's restricted storage wing? Renner crouched, brushing his fingers over the concrete. It felt slightly cooler than the surrounding surface. Not broken, not tampered with, but different. His instincts told him this was no escape. This was a message. And Avery Mallard was always precise with his messages. As officers searched the surrounding blocks, Renner examined the inmate's belongings again. That's when he found it, a folded piece of paper tucked behind the last page of a worn paperback. No handwriting. No threats. Just a simple shape drawn in black ink, a circle with a single line slashed through the center. Renner's face tightened. It was the same symbol found at 3 unsolved crime scenes from Avery's past. The symbol investigators once believed marked a target. And now it had appeared inside Holman Prison. But the chilling part wasn't the symbol. It was what Renner discovered when he lifted the paper. Beneath it, scratched faintly into the book's cover, were 4 words that changed everything. He was never alone. Detective Renner stood in the dim cell block as the lights flickered overhead, the storm still rumbling across at Moore. The 4 words carved into the paperback echoed in his mind. He was never alone. Avery Mallard had been locked down in Holman for nearly a year, isolated from general population. If he wasn't alone, then someone inside the prison had been helping him, quietly, consistently, and with precision. By sunrise, Renner had assembled a small team to interview officers from Avery's block. Most insisted they hadn't noticed anything unusual. But one officer, a young recruit named Carson Hale, seemed on edge. He kept glancing down the hallway, his voice cracking every time Renner asked a direct question. Renner recognized the signs immediately: guilt, fear, or both. When Carson finally spoke, it was barely above a whisper. "Someone told us to avoid Unit C after midnight. I thought it was a maintenance order. I didn't ask questions. Around here, we're told not to." He didn't name who gave the instruction. He didn't have to. Renner already suspected the same thing he had feared months before. Avery's influence had stretched far beyond his cell. Holman had always been known for tension, but this was different. If someone was helping inmates disappear, without breaking locks or tripping alarms, it meant they understood the prison's infrastructure better than most staff did. It meant the danger wasn't coming from outside. It was rooted deep inside the facility. Renner requested the surveillance footage from Units B, C, and the restricted storage wing, hoping for even a brief glimpse of movement. When the footage arrived, he noticed something alarming right away. Between 1:55 a.m. and 2:10 a.m., all three cameras cut to static. Not a blackout. Not a malfunction. Controlled static, the same pattern repeated on each feed. Someone had overwritten the system. But Renner's eyes sharpened when he rewound the footage one more time. Right before the static began, a shadow crossed the edge of the frame. Not an inmate. Not Avery. The figure walked with the confidence of someone who belonged there. A staff member. The angle was too poor to capture a face, but the uniform was unmistakable. Renner paused the screen and zoomed in. The badge patch was worn, the edges frayed. A veteran officer, someone assigned to that wing for years. Someone who knew every blind spot. Before he could process it further, the warden called him to the administrative office. A sealed envelope had arrived, addressed to Renner by name, delivered by an unknown courier to the prison gate. The guards said the man dropped it and disappeared into the rain before they could ask questions. Inside the envelope was a single photograph. It showed the exterior of Holman Prison from a vantage point only employees had access to, a narrow rooftop walkway on the north wing. Standing in the background, barely visible in the grainy shot, was a silhouette that looked strikingly similar to Avery Mallard. Renner felt a jolt of disbelief. That walkway had been locked for years, the entrance secured with a special keycard issued to only 3 people. Avery should never have been able to reach it. But the message wasn't the photo. It was what was written on the back, in the same black ink as the symbol. "You're looking in the wrong place." Renner stared at the note, feeling a tension rising in his chest. If Avery wasn't escaping Holman, then he was staging something much bigger, something that required misdirection, timing, and inside help. And if Renner had misread the first clue, the consequences were already unfolding. Because as he stepped into the hallway, alarms suddenly blared across the prison. Officers sprinted past him toward the south wing, shouting into their radios. Another inmate was missing. And this time, the cell door was wide open. The alarms shook the walls of Holman Prison as red lights pulsed across the corridors. Detective Renner pushed through a wave of officers racing toward the south wing. The tension inside the facility was thick enough to choke on. Holman had seen crises before, but not 2 disappearances in the same night. And not with the same eerie precision. When Renner reached the open cell, he stopped cold. The prisoner missing this time was Leon Briggs, a former construction foreman convicted of financial crimes involving a hidden network of shell companies. Briggs and Avery Mallard had never been linked in court, but Renner knew better than to believe coincidences in a place like Holman. There were no signs of struggle, no tools, and no footprints. Just like before, the cell looked untouched. But something caught Renner's eye, a faint streak of grey dust near the foot of the bed. He rubbed it between his fingers. Concrete residue. Fresh. As if someone had brushed against an unfinished wall. He turned toward the corridor and scanned the layout. The south wing contained several rooms rarely entered, old storage closets, abandoned maintenance tunnels from the original 1960s design, and one sealed chamber that had been off-limits for decades due to structural instability. Renner's pulse quickened. The clues were leading underground. Minutes later, accompanied by 2 officers, Renner followed the trail down a narrow hallway toward the restricted chambers. The deeper they went, the more the walls changed, newer brick giving way to older concrete, the kind poured decades before Holman's modern cells existed. Strange echoes drifted through the emptiness. It felt like the belly of the prison itself. At the final door, a rusted metal sign hung crooked, authorized maintenance only. The padlock securing it was old, but the scratches around the keyhole were fresh. Someone had opened it recently. Renner pulled the door. It groaned open. Inside was a forgotten service tunnel stretching beneath the facility, lit only by the occasional emergency bulb buzzing weakly overhead. Pipes lined the ceiling. Dust coated the floor. It was a hidden artery of the prison, a space that officers rarely remembered and inmates should never have known existed. But two sets of footprints disturbed the dust. Renner followed them deeper until the tunnel widened into a chamber where industrial equipment once sat a day. Now the room was nearly empty, except for a row of cardboard boxes stacked neatly in the corner. He opened the first. Inside were blueprints. Not of escape routes. Not of tunnels. They were blueprints of Holman's internal layout, including camera wiring, emergency power circuits, and blind spots. The kind of documents only a long-serving staff member could access. In the next box, Renner found files, printouts of court documents, financial records, and communication logs. They revealed something far deeper than an escape. Avery Mallard and Leon Briggs were not working together for freedom. They were working together to expose someone. The final file at the bottom of the box had a single name written across the top: Warden Mitchell Rowan. Before Renner could process the implications, a voice echoed from behind him. "You should have stopped chasing ghosts, Detective." Renner turned. Warden Rowan stood at the tunnel entrance, flashlight in hand, his expression cold. Not angry. Not panicked. Just resigned. "You were never supposed to find this," Rowan said quietly. "Mallard and Briggs weren't prisoners to me. They were liabilities. And liabilities disappear." Renner's heart pounded. "You helped them vanish." "No," Rowan replied. "I silenced them. They wanted to expose what I built here, a system. A profitable one. And you got too close again." Renner reached for his radio, but Rowan raised a hand. "They're gone, Detective. And soon, so will you." But before Rowan could step closer, another voice rose from the shadows behind him. "You made a mistake, Warden." Rowan spun. Avery Mallard stepped into the weak light, alive, calm, and unrestrained. "This time," Avery said, "you're the liability." For the first time that night, Renner saw fear in the warden's eyes. What happened next would shake Holman Prison for years, but the official reports would tell only fragments. What the public eventually learned was this: corruption, insider deals, and years of covered operations had finally surfaced, not because an inmate escaped, but because an inmate exposed the truth. Detective Renner submitted the evidence. Arrests followed. Investigations reopened. Holman's darkest secrets were dragged into the light. And the final twist: Avery Mallard was returned to his cell without a single charge added. Because he never broke out. He simply walked through the doors opened for him. If you think this story was intense, the narrator would say, "You're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it."